Today on Diksha, we talk about life. On today's episode, we talk about a relatively small topic, and that is life, especially human life. Now, the first thing or the first thought I want to start off today's program with is that life, or let's say my life, is only important to me, and your life is only important to you. And although that is a, let's say, relatively mean point of view to some people, it really helps if you take this stance to put life into perspective. And some philosophers or some people, famous people, have said, I can't remember who, that live life as though you're the hero of your story. Which is basically the same thing that I'm saying, that your life is only important to you. Because most of us, I think, or I've heard from people, view life as, let's say, living for somebody else. It's a common theme in marriage and relationships, romantic relationships, that we say that we are living for the happiness of the other person. As children, we say it's the duty of a child to live and make their parents happy. As a worker, we are taught that it's our job to make the boss happy. But relatively speaking, our life is only important to us. And we can come to that logical conclusion if we look at the examples I just gave, that, well, if our life is dedicated to our job, then, well, what happens when we change our job? Or what happened before we had a job? Or after we retire? And then if we look at, my life is dedicated to making my parents happy. Well, what about before I was born? Well, whose job was it to make my parents happy? Well, what happens when they die? So, and even to my partner, to my spouse, well, the same can be applied. Before we got into a relationship, well, whose job was it to make that person happy? And when I die, or when they die, or when we separate, well, whose job is it? So, well, the one person that stays with me through my whole life is me. And it's a simple act of logic to come to that point, but it's something that culturally we are taught otherwise. We are taught that we should live to serve the community and to serve humanity and all these nice ideals. In the past, this has led to many wars, religious wars, national, regional, world wars. Because when we live to serve other people, we serve the ideas and ideals of other people. And at some point, we serve the ideals of some ideal. We don't even serve our own personal ideals, but we rather serve the ideals of somebody who might have just set up a system. Now, I am by no means attacking any system of governance or any religious ideal or anything like that. What I'm saying is that these ideas should be something that are important to us as people. That, let's say, when I wake up in the morning, that the purpose of me getting out of bed is to serve me. And although I know that this point sounds a little selfish, it sounds self-centered, it really should be. And the reason I say this is the human mind is designed for survival. We are designed for self-survival. So although we adopt a lot of ideals, we adopt a lot of ideas from people, most of the time, when we are in a situation of do or die, we resort back to our animal instincts and we become self-centered by nature. It's by design, because self-preservation and survival is key, and that is what generates the ideals of society. But the reason I draw it back to having an attitude of self-preservation, or realizing that my life is only important to me, is because when we serve an ideal, we serve, let's say, something external, firstly, but then it comes with sacrifice, which is a key part of life. But then what do we sacrifice in serving an ideal? And I think this is where things become a little dangerous, when we start sacrificing key facets of life in pursuit of an ideal. And what I mean is this. Let's say, key to my well-being as a person is health. So I eat healthy, I get enough bed rest to allow my body to heal and my mind to heal. I eat in a healthy manner. I engage in activities that benefits me as a person, as an individual, to maintain my health. This is only in the aspect of health. So what happens when a person pursues an ideal? That's something external to what they consider to be best suited for them in life. Well, they begin to sacrifice it, begin to sacrifice health, begin to sacrifice well-being. Well, if I as a person can willingly sacrifice my own health and my own well-being in the pursuit of an ideal, and by nature I am designed as an animal for self-preservation, well, then it's no hard task to sacrifice somebody else in pursuit of an ideal. And this, I think, is the root or the seed of cruelty. And I'm not calling people by nature cruel, but when the ideal supersedes the preservation of the being, when you scale that up to, let's say, community level, and the community has an identity, then the sacrifice of well-being for the pursuit of an ideal means that we can sacrifice an individual or individuals in the pursuit of an ideal. Because if you look at the systems of my body, let's say, for example, I consider my body as a community of facets. So health, let's say general appearance, social life or sociability, family life, wealth, and I begin sacrificing one. We consider each facet as an individual, and I begin sacrificing one individual, another individual. So I begin sacrificing my health, my family life, my social life. If we scale that up into the community level or the national level, well, then we have no problem sacrificing one community or one individual in the pursuit of an ideal. And just so as with the individual, if you consider all the facets that make an individual balanced, at a certain point in sacrificing facets of the individual becomes destabilized and eventually collapses. When we scale that up and we begin sacrificing individual after individual in the community, or we begin sacrificing community after community in the nation, then soon it collapses. And collapsing could be morally, it could be financially, it could be the sovereignty of the nation when they get conquered. But the seed of such an occurrence is the attitude of sacrifice of life, of what makes up the facets of life. And it is the understanding of what makes the life of an individual, and what more importantly, what makes the life of an individual balanced and healthy. It is when we understand this that we understand what can and cannot be sacrificed as we begin to scale it up in terms of community and nation and globally. So all this boils down to an individual realizing what is important, and that which is important is oneself. Now, fundamentally speaking, we know that a person needs rest, a person needs recreation, a person needs a sense of security, a person needs some form of connection with the world around them to be balanced and individual. So, for example, if we see that life, and life I mean community life, national life, is collapsing, well, what's the seed problem? For example, in a person, we know when we feel stressed out and we get the feeling that we want to go and relax, or we know as a person who is experiencing a lot of health problems that we need to probably look at diet or look at bad habits. So I'm saying my life is important to me. It's important that I be healthy. It's important that I feel safe. It's important that I feel well rested, well adjusted. And so, if I can understand that in me, then I can understand that in my spouse, my parents, my children, my community. Then I go out into the world as a strong link or a strong member of society. But when the individual is compromised, then when we scale it up, society becomes compromised, because society is built by people, it's a collection of people. So it's a very important thing if we observe that society or the family is crumbling or shaky, that we observe ourselves first. And it's not a criticism, it's not being sarcastic to say, well, look at yourself before you judge others. It's a suggestion that if we are to bring solutions into society, we must have them embodied in ourselves. And that only comes when we place importance in ourselves. So I want to reiterate at the end of today's program that it's not the statement itself can be taken egotistically. But it is by no means an egotistical statement to put oneself first and to say, my life is important to me, I need to take charge and become the best individual to myself. And naturally, that flows out into society. So I'd like to thank you for joining me today on Diksha. I look forward to seeing you next week, right here on Sankhya TV, the first Hindu TV station in Trinidad and Tobago, and your number one choice for inspirational, cultural, and spiritual programming.